Hello and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Okran, welcoming you on behalf of Team Springboard, ably led by Comfort. This is your most inspirational show and the point where the greatest minds in the world converge. Your virtual university is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse, the enterprise group UMB Bank, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. So here we are once again in the engine room, and today I have a very big special for you, the journey into the creative mind. So if you are a graphic designer, a photographer, you are in the creative arts, advertising, modeling, anything that involves innovation, fashion design, this show is especially for you because we want to explore what goes on in your mind and what conflicts do you face as you try and create solutions. And if you are not a creative professional, this is for you even more because it will help you understand the creative people you work with, what inspires them, what turns them off, and how to get the best out of them. My guest for today is perfectly placed to give us answers to these big questions because he recently won the National Communications Award for the Creative Personality of the Year in the area of branding. Known face and probably the most notable face in graphic design, Nana Kwadwo, the creative director for Oxygen Brand and Design Consultancy. Nana, good to see you.
Hello, Reverend.
How's everything? How's family? How's everything?
Well, it's doing great. Everything is well. Moving on. I hope you're well yourself.
Is there something about designers wearing black? I'm curious. Is there a color thing for you?
I guess, it's similar to what Mark Zuckerberg has been saying. You don't have to think too much about what you're going to wear. And black seems to be the most, appropriate color that blends nicely. It also kind of attracts a lot of, creative juices. So
for those who are listening on radio, you can't get to see the black, but he says that the black attracts creative juices. I must start wearing black more often. Please, when I do, don't ask me whether I have a funeral. Let's go on to design, and I'm going to try and explore from you for the benefit of those who are just interested in creative people. I have a feeling creative people are unique. So let's start from, in your opinion, what makes a good designer?
Okay, so design, it's a huge area. My focus is in visual design, so graphic design, moving images, photography, those kind of things. So we're talking about design. It's been co-opted a lot by the fashion people as well. So sometimes you say design, people are thinking of fashion, but in design, what makes a good designer, a good visual designer, a good graphic designer is the appetite to communicate. It is, seeing things which are chaotic and trying to bring order to it. But most importantly, it is the whole idea of trying to create desire, for your client. Because one of the misconceptions is that design is art, but design is like a business tool. And so the ultimate, aim at the end of it all is to help solve a business problem.
So ultimately, what you consider success will be when what you create out of chaos, as you say, itself creates desire and solves a business problem.
Yes. It's a nice balance.
Right.
Yes, you can communicate, so get from stage A to stage B. For example, you pick up your app, you put on an Uber. Instead of just seeing the map, you can see the vehicle move. So all that emotion, all that desire, makes you want to take part in the service. So it's not just about raw communication. There's an emotional aspect of it which makes people purchase, which makes people buy, which makes people move. So it's just striking that nice balance between the two.
I like what you say, the emotional connection, because somehow when you see a good work, the first thing you say is, and that let me go to you, the designer, which is more fulfilling, and I'm being honest in asking this question. Which one is more fulfilling for you? The that the person sees when they see the work, or the money they pay for the service? And give me a very honest answer.
For a designer, you want the client to say, wow. But you yourself, you need to know that apart from the wow, have you solved that business problem? So yes, the wow is what we're actually looking for. But underneath it all, because most clients are not aware of what it is that we do, they just want the results. They want the wow, and then we make sure that it communicates and it solves that business problem. So yes, the wow is what we're really after.
The wow
and the money,
the solution, and then the payment. Okay, let me go to the natural flair versus formal training. I mean, when a profession is doing well, when it solves problems, when it's getting attention, somebody says, I want my child to go into design. Yes. I think they will do well there, or it's a lucrative, or it's a promising, or it's an exciting professional area. Which is more critical from your own experience, the natural flair the person has or the formal training that they get from an educational institution or apprenticeship?
Speaking from my experience, yes, I did have a kind of natural affinity for design, making things look beautiful. But I think what has helped me in my profession is things outside of design. One of the challenges I see in the industry among some of my peers is the 110% focus on design. When that happens, you end up just recreating what has been done in the past. But if you have interest outside of design, it could be music, it could be the arts, it could be science, whatever it is, you bring that to bear, because each design problem is very different. If we are talking about the hardcore technical parts of design, maybe trying to learn the software or learn the fundamentals, the foundation of design, color theory, all those kind of things, yes, it's good to probably have some formal training. But most of the successful designers, with their natural affinity, with their natural talent, they have interest outside of design.
So tell me, what are those things that you explore outside traditional design?
So things like, history, reading a lot about fine artists, reading about current affairs, getting myself involved in innovation, anything that is, quite exciting, technology. So things that are not focused on visual design are things which, drive my interest. Yes.
There's a point you made that caught my attention. You mentioned that there's a tendency to give what you call 110% concentration to design assignments.
Yes.
And you said that kind of concentration rather leads to repetitive production of the same themes. But when you spread yourself into other things, you seem to rather bring width and breadth.
Definitely.
Help us understand that.
It's like an echo chamber, because you're hanging around with designers, you're online looking at what other designers are doing in the same sphere, whether it's identity design, whether it's packaging design. Take a stroll down the aisle at any shopping mall and look at the fruit juices. You would see what I'm talking about. They all have a picture of the fruit. They all have a glass with the juice in it. They all have, some nice edible colors around those kind of things. Not that it is a wrong process, but the point is, if you are consistently focusing on that kind of area where you're just looking at design for design's sake, you end up repeating those kind of things. The idea that, this is what the client wants, sometimes isn't really true. I mean, in my experience, yes, the client might be veering towards a certain, direction, but because you know what you're doing and because it is also solving a business problem, you're able to steer the client away from, I won't say cliche, but from those kind of expected kind of things. So that's a similar example is what Blue Skies did in the past. They've changed their packaging now, but in the past, instead of just having the fruit there with the glass there and then the the chilled teardrops on the packaging. They rather used a kind of assembly line design where you can see the fruit from the farm moving all the way through the process and then ending up with the consumer. That is what I'm talking about. So if you're able to think, outside of just design, because it's fruit and therefore I need to see the fruit, I need to see juicy a glass, I need to see all those kind of elements, you end up just repeating them.
Is there a conflict sometimes between what the client thinks they want and what you think they need?
All the time.
Tell me about that one, because I'm sure that's the biggest point of contention for a designer.
I think that's what makes it exciting, because that's the challenge. So I see every design problem as a challenge, not as an obstacle or something that is just going to, quote unquote, annoy you. The client might come and say, okay, this is what we are doing, we need this, we need that. Most clients initially are bold, but they don't necessarily want bold solutions. So how do you get them there? You just hold your hand step by step. So a quick example, you go to a party, everybody's wearing a blue dress, for example. And that is, let's say, similar to, let's say, the banking industry. Everybody wants their things to be blue, 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 blue. Then all of a sudden you come up with a solution that is using orange or red or black. There's no way they're going to accept that. But how do you make them accept it? Okay, I'm still going to use your blue for you. Maybe I have an accent color of your orange. I can work with that. And then the next time you keep moving it, before you realize you have an orange bank. And now we have a bag that uses black and yellow, which was unheard of. So it's step by step. I normally try and tell the clients, okay, you don't cross a Nima Gata in 2 steps. You jump once over there. And people who really go that far are those who tend to own the companies. If you work with an institution where there are layers of leadership, then it's a little bit difficult. You need to just go step by step and then try and work with them. But normally, those who own companies and they deal directly with designers, they deal directly with brand identity professionals, are able to make that jump if you're able to convince them with the strategy. So because, yellow is nice, all those things are beautiful. The wow part is beautiful, but they need to know that it will sell. So I think for most clients, hearing design and all those flowery language doesn't really work with them. They just want to make sure that will it sell.
So you're saying that to orient somebody who is initially bold, you said they're all initially bold,
they start
but at heart,
I want the best of the best.
Very conservative.
Oh, yes.
In terms of veering out. And you're saying that to introduce them to innovation that is bold and game-changing, you don't do it at once. You work them step by step.
Even with clients who are quite bold, it gets to a stage they're like, and then maybe because of your track record, they have to say, maybe you know what you're doing, and they give you that latitude. Sometimes you know what you're doing. But in the end, it all works, for good, because once it is based on strategy and it's not based on I feel, the solution, it gets quite close to home.
In all my interaction with the subject of design, one of the stories that I heard that really caught my attention is the story about Ogilvy and the design of the advertising concept for the Rolls-Royce Silver when it came out. And I guess it's the biggest case study that anyone who goes to design school will have to deal with. And it is said that it was a very difficult assignment to create an advertising concept for the next silver Rolls-Royce. And so there was a lot of thought given to it for 3 weeks to see what exactly must we say. And the eventual concept that won was a one-liner. But the story behind the story was that the guy just took the advert and then, whether that part is true or not, I can't say. But the story behind the story is that he went on holidays in Morocco and just chilled for 3 weeks. And on the last day before the presentation of the ad concept, was returning to his hotel and sat in the lobby and heard the pendulum clock just before midnight swing tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. And then when the clock struck 12, the concept just flew through his mind, and then he just wrote it down. And so the winning tagline, if I may say so, was, at 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in this new Rolls Royce comes from the electric clock. And the car sold massively.
Yeah.
For you as a designer, and I know that this one, the real thing is about the type of customer you are serving and the fact that these are typically rich people who want the serenity of a car that doesn't make too much noise, has a quiet engine. Yes. But I'm more interested in the engine of the design. So let's explore this issue of a Eureka moment. Are there assignments that you take and you probably spend a month thinking and leaving it and going to do other things, watching films, and you say you're working, you're literally watching a film, and then eventually within a short space of 5 minutes, the concept just comes flying through and you try to convince yourself that this is a month's work, even though 2 other months you're just watching films. Help me. Is what I'm saying, does it make sense?
Very much.
Help me to understand that one.
It's a, I don't want to say esoteric kind of thing or it's a mystical kind of thing, but yes, you need to be able to first of all have a lot of fodder, a lot of information. Raw material. The beauty about design is, like I said, every project is different. You go into it and you have no clue what it is, so you have to educate yourself. So at the end of the day, you know a bit about this industry, you know a bit about this industry, you know a bit about this kind of product, what goes into it, all those kind of things, before you even have any reason to start thinking about solving the design problem. The Eureka moments come in; they're very, very, very rare. My process, it's a little bit technical in the beginning stages, where it's a lot of thinking, a lot of reading, a lot of researching, and then I have a system where I put it through my I call it my branding creative strategy. Yes, so I put it in through that system, and then it will whittle down to a point where I can see, okay, this is where I can now start focusing on to see whether the inspiration will pop out. Because before you get to that stage, you have no idea whether it's going to be about the quietness of the engine, and therefore the loudest noise you would hear is the ticking of the clock. You have no idea that's what's going to happen.
So do you create a blank sheet with every assignment?
It has to be so.
But it's difficult.
And that is the challenge. That is why it's expensive. That's why design is expensive. And that's why design sometimes takes time. Yes, once in a while, you might get that Eureka moment, only because, yes, you've been filling your head with things that are, taking place in the world. You are reading around the subject. You are reading around things that have got nothing to do with design. And so, therefore, when something now comes in, it's like a pencil just lying there, and then you saw an eraser somewhere, and then you match the two up, and then you have a pencil with the eraser at the tip. It's those kind of things. You're just joining too much unconnected ideas to the point where you say, okay, now how do I now make a personal decision that this is the direction I want to go? Because the risk is you might have so many ideas, they might all be viable, but you need to now take a step and say, this is the direction I'm going to go with. To the clients, they might think, oh, this is fantastic, this is wow, but there's been a lot of hard work that has gone through. Yes, once in a blue moon, there might be an Eureka moment where you haven't thought about anything, but I still believe that it's because you've already filled your head with a lot of things, and therefore once you saw that problem, the solution just came to you.
And that's exactly the point I'm making. I'm not talking about an easy solution. I'm saying that what the final solution may have come in 5 minutes. In fact, the Springboard theme song was composed by Danilete in 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah?
But we had been asking him for a year. And even though he wrote the song in 5 minutes, the late Danilete, he says he wrote the song in a year. And he tried to convince us that the whole year when he was not writing the song, he was thinking about it. And so everything he was thinking about came together in those 5 minutes. And to you, you're like, but we need it now. We need it for... So how do you combine... How does a creative person combine that process that does not like gidi-gidi and that client who likes gidi-gidi, in the sense that they need it for the urgency of the client and the commercial interest vis-a-vis the serenity of the designer and the quest for inspiration? How do you find the balance?
It's never easy, but one system that I use, I'm not too much of a football fan, and I stole this actually from Reverend Anaba. I work a lot with pastors, Reverend Otabil, Reverend Anaba. They have two different systems, so I think this would be a good way to illustrate it. So Reverend Anaba has a lot of ideas. Every day an idea, every day an idea. Reverend Notable is more paced with the ideas. So it might gestate for a bit and then the idea is birthed, whilst on the other side, the ideas just keep popping up. So how do I work with these two? With Reverend Naba, for example, because the ideas are always flowing, you might not have the time and the patience to do all that research and all those kind of processes that you want to go through to get the result that you're looking for. But you still need a result. You know, you might not be satisfied with the way, you know, oh, I've done this thing and it's so glorious, and my design friends will be giving me a high five in the back of your head. Even though you are solving that design problem, you also want respect from your peers. So you're trying to think, how do I combine all of those kind of things, you know, into a proper solution and make it successful, let it sell, and let it also appeal to everybody, that kind of thing. The illustration is simple. A goal is a goal, whether it's a scrappy goal or whether it's a kick that was taken from, you know, the center line. Once it enters the net, it's a goal. So for my advice I give to science is just to start the work. Start the work, solve the problem. If you're able to solve the problem, the design is very, very easy. You might not, as a designer, be thinking, oh, I didn't really want to, you know, I didn't get it the way I wanted it to, you know, sound or look and, you know, the feel and all those kind of things. I might not have been able to get all those kind of things working, but it solved the problem and it moved. The funny thing is, and this is not to disrespect designers or clients or consumers, people are okay with okay. It doesn't have to be award-winning, it doesn't have to be groundbreaking, it doesn't have to be innovative, it just has to solve the problem.
And that's my next question. Do you sometimes find a situation where the client says, this is perfect, and you say, no, I will never allow you to use this because it's not good enough?
Quite apart from it being, you know, coming from your institution, your design firm, or your name being attached to it, you're also thinking, how is it going to help the clients in the long term? You want to try and see whether you can do something which will future-proof the design that you're creating for the client. You don't want to do something and then in 6 months or a year they want to change it. You know, you want to make sure that they've invested in an asset which is going to help them bear fruit. So you want to do a design which you know that in 5-10 years will still be solid. I mean, if something is going to change, then maybe the client had their company bought up by somebody and therefore they have to necessarily change it. But if everything is going well with the client, it should be strong enough to at least for 10 years. It should be working strong enough for 10 years. A good example would be the ICGC identity, the ICGC logo, which, funny enough, took a year to create. Even though I finished it very, very early, I just had to let it be there because, of course, the history, you know, behind the client and what they wanted to achieve and the whole aura of creating something for such, you know, an organization was quite heavy. So once I created the stuff, I still wasn't convinced. So I said, okay, let me just do a few more just to see whether I can solve this problem. And I wanted to present it, but Doc said, relax, you know. So after a year, he requested for it. I was even surprised he requested for it. I showed it to him, went through. And the one which I had done in a few minutes was the one leading the pack. Even though there were others which were, you know, a close second, it was still leading the pack. And then there were just a few corrections done to it, and then that basically, you know, solved that problem.
It's a very beautiful conversation because, so the question then becomes, all those ones that did not work, were they part of the process?
Definitely. Without that, you will not have that. I mean, you might be able to have the solution, but you need, it's like a lagoon, you know, it's in your head, you know, and the more it's in there, you know, what happens to lagoons? It starts to smell. You need to just keep pouring them all out. Keep pouring everything out. Keep pouring everything out. And then when it's out of you, then new information can come in and keep pouring those things out. Then you can now have a way of culling the things that you've created and see, okay, the reason why this one is sticking out, the reason why this one is winning the pitch, quote unquote, is because of this and that and that and that. So without going through those processes, without some stillborn, designs, some designs just, dying along the way, you will not have that full confidence that, yes, you've created something which will last. And, over time, that logo it's been over almost it's getting close to 20 years now, and it's been able to, move into the digital era where it can now take different forms and different colors, and, from that ornate, logo. So that's what you want to create for your clients. You want to make sure that they can have an asset which they've invested in. They need to understand that they're investing in something. They might not be able to see it and touch it, like a building or a car or whatever it is, but they need to appreciate that it is an asset that helps build their reputation. Once you talk to a client and you say reputation instead of saying branding. If you say branding, if you say reputation, they sit up. If you say selling, they sit up. So it's the language that as a designer you need to start learning. Which is why I'm saying if you keep focusing on design, it's so nice. Oh, yes, the identity is this way, and therefore it's going to do that, and the colors are there because it's analogous colors, or it's all beautiful, but they just want to hear reputation. They want to hear that it's going to sell.
When I come back from this break, we'll explore even more exciting themes because we'll find out how did this journey begin? What were the trigger points? Who were the angels that appeared on the scene and pointed him towards his Jerusalem? And what has been the most painful lesson that he has learned on the way? What have been the most exciting ones? And what is that moment that you said, yes, this is what I was born to do? If you just joined us, my guest is Nana Kwadwo. Everyone calls him Oxygen because he's the lead designer, creative director of Oxygen brand and design consultancy. So everybody calls him by his company's name, which is very understandable. And he's been telling us inside the engine room a very interesting story about a journey through a creative mind. When I come back, let's break up the foundations and how he got to where he is today. Please don't go away.
In a world where you can be anything, who will you become? When you can go anywhere and never be alone, how far will you go? When your voice can reach every ear in the world, who will you inspire? When your money can travel faster and further, who will it reach? When you can tell a story in every language, which one will you tell? When you don't need permission to turn your dreams into reality, you go for it. Whatever it is, wherever it is, go. And when you think you've reached your limit, we'll keep you going. Let's go.
Apply now for a degree in environmental engineering, fashion design, landscape design, interior design, business administration, economics, law, nursing, civil engineering, architecture, computer science, IT, theology, PharmD, and many others at Central University, Ghana's leading private Christian university. Admissions are open for the 2021-2022 academic year. Degrees are available on our campuses at Mutual, Christ Temple Abosokai, and Kumasi. You can also enroll in our MBA with various specializations. Scholarships are available for needy but brilliant students. Call now on 0303 318 583 or 0302 396 189 and speak with an admissions counselor. You can also visit our website at central.edu.gh for more info. Central University, raising transformational leaders through faith, integrity, and excellence.
There once was a man who had it all. He had skill, he had charisma. He was loved by all, but above all, he knew the importance of helping others, lifting others up. He knew the importance of giving other people an advantage so that they too would use that advantage to help others. All you need is that advantage that sets you apart from the rest. And when you discover that advantage, life's challenges don't seem so daunting anymore. That's where we come in. Enterprise, your advantage.
UMB was established in 1972 as the premier bank for the corporate and private sector in Ghana. From our very beginning, as the only Ghanaian bank serving all categories of businesses, we set a standard for excellence and innovation. Over the past 45 years, we've built a financially healthy and strong bank. demonstrated our commitment to our customers and to growing businesses, and exhibited originality and innovation at every turn. At UMB, our focus is built around people, service, products and technology. These are the key to our present success and our future triumphs. At UMB, we're poised to make a difference not only with our customers, but also in the banking industry. We invite you to share in our future. Our future starts now with you.
Welcome back to Springboard, a virtual university brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by the MTN Pulse, the enterprise group UMB Bank, with media support from the multimedia group and the graphic communications group. On Tuesday in the graphic business, find this conversation fully transcribed and the thoughts of Nana Kojo expressed systematically for your own learning and also for your own enjoyment and sharing with your friends. Now we've been talking about the creative mind, how it works and how different it is, and the following are the lessons I've picked from you so far. You see, a good designer must set out with the appetite to communicate out of chaos something creative that generates desire, a wow factor, and ultimately a business solution. Mm-hmm. The second is about natural flair versus training. You say you may have a natural flair, but you are greatly held by things you do outside design, like writing, music, reading, current affairs, literature, history, and the arts generally, including photography, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. You also mentioned that exploring non-design themes is important because 100% concentration on design in trying to solve a problem creates repetitive solutions and outcomes. Veering out expands the echo chamber. And I thought I loved that point. The fourth is about the client's need versus the designer's solution. You see, most clients are initially bold, but they tend to prefer conservative solutions. And so you need to hold their hand, as it were, and systematically help them to appreciate those bold solutions that will solve the business problem. The fifth is about ease of approval. You said when the client owns their own organization, the decision-making matrix is easier because they approve things and things get done, and therefore you can apply more innovation. But when there are different layers of approval in a very tiered organization, sometimes it's difficult to introduce innovation. Then the sixth one is about the famous Eureka moment. You see, once in a while you may get an Eureka moment, but the process involves really starting with a blank sheet and then creating a breadth of raw material and then using a proven process to create or settle down to create ultimately an acceptable solution.
Yes.
And then the seventh is about finding the balance between the client's agency and their commercial interests and pressures and the designer's perfectionist mind. Sometimes they are utopian orientation.
Definitely.
You see, it can be very difficult.
It can be.
I still didn't get the solution, but you've admitted it's a very difficult thing because the client will always have pressure.
Yes.
And you always also want to use your proven way to process their needs. The eighth one is quite interesting. You see, the rejected works, the several drafts you did were not a waste, but they are the foundation on which the finally accepted work rests. Let me explore further and ask you, the journey to becoming who you are. Did you do apprenticeship, volunteering? Were there seasons in your life where you were not even sure you would become a designer? Help us to appreciate it.
Great. So, I mean, in growing up, as I've already explained, I love the arts, I love design already, and but I weirdly, I never thought I'd become a designer. I was kind of dismissing, that talent. I thought it just came so easy. I thought, no, I need something which is a bit more rigorous. So one of the arguments with my mother was, I don't think this is something I want to do because it just.
Your mother was a creative person. She was in acting.
Yeah, she was into acting.
The great Alexander Duah. I loved it. She was such a beautiful talent.
So
just to celebrate her memory.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so she was always, I was like, no, this is just too easy. I need to do something a bit more, funny enough, I find myself, so my interest again was more into writing. I thought I was going to be a teacher.
Wonderful.
So in starting with my design journey, I worked, again, it's a bit of a sad story, but just for the sake of people who might be asking, because most people don't know this. So, like I said, I wanted to study English, literature and whatnot. So I stayed in the UK a bit. So I came down to see my mom and things, and she passed away.
Sorry about that.
So, all the dreams of, I'm going to study. If I got acceptance at Oxford to study English literature based on recommendation of my headmaster then. But again, so when I came, so all that, the shock of the death.
Slow down a bit.
Yes, I'm intentionally moving fast.
No,
the problem, the reason why is I found that in my journey, in my interaction with other designers and trying to encourage people, when they hear that part, they feel, then I'm not going to make it. And
Now, hold on a second. You said your interest was in literature, which is very evident from your work. Mm-hmm. And so you wanted to study English literature, and you considered becoming a teacher because that's what you loved. Mm-hmm. You thought that required more application.
Yes.
And you got accepted to do
English literature
at Oxford University.
Based on the recommendation of my headmaster. I schooled in the UK.
Right.
Mr. Warren, I think he's probably passed on by now, unfortunately. But again, it wasn't for to go and study design or anything. And as I came back to Ghana, my mother passing away and whatnot. So that whole chaotic moment, because she was more or less like the person who, my whole world. She and my father were a bit estranged, even though he was still around. He was in Nigeria then, but so she was my whole world. So imagine her not being around, so everything had just collapsed and whatnot. And I got a new mom, Mariana Pasampong. I know that you might know of her.
Absolutely.
Yes. And she was the person who put the pieces back together. And she had a design studio called Mac Consult and Designs. And so in the midst of all that, sadness and whatnot, she introduced me. Actually, she even invited me to church, to ICGC. And that is where I also got the chance to be doing the work that I'm doing, but I'll get to that. And so she had a design studio called My Consultant Design, and so started working with her there, and the relationship started to grow and grow, and that is where I would say I did my quote-unquote Jota apprenticeship. That is where most of the chaff, again, no disrespect to all the clients that I worked for during that process, but at that time I must have had the talent, but then the technical part and the realities, of the industry and the requirements of clients was something I had no clue about, and I had to be learning with her. From there, I'll just take a quick detour. I was at church because she introduced me to ICGC. I used to go to the Methodist Church in Dansoman. She introduced me to ICGC. I visited for a while. I was like, why is this man wearing traditional, Africa, who's this person? And the build wasn't complete. I was like, what is this place? But then there was something magical about the place. What I loved was the community. What I loved was, the preaching of the word directly and that kind of thing. But then I was there in church one day and I heard a competition. They put a competition out. They were setting up this new NGO called Central Aid. And they were asking for designers, to take part in this competition. I said, okay, let me give it a try. And the result was I won first and second place.
You're serious?
So, of course, they didn't put anybody's name. When they're doing the judging, there's no name. It's just based on the work. So I submitted about 2 or 3 pieces. And when the results came in, they were like, okay, so the first person is an Akwejo, the second person is also an Akwejo. And that caught the attention of Dr. Otabi. I was like, who's this person? And the rest, I have to say, is history. So from Mac Consult and Design, I moved on to an agency called STB McCann. And that's where I met another fellow who really groomed me, called Mr. Kofi Amos. He was a very hard taskmaster, very creative, top of his game, you know, and he didn't have time, you know, to suffer any fool. And he polished, you know, the diamond. He put me through fire. And you might think he might not like you and whatnot, but I mean, like they say, if you don't like somebody, you won't waste your energy and your time trying to perfect the person. And so Mr. was the person who really drilled into me, you know, professionalism, and drilled into me, you know, how to separate the whole idea of this fantasy of me being a glamorous designer versus try to solve business problems using design. And then from there, I started my own agency with a friend. It was called Sign Ups then, and then it dovetailed. It was more into general design, and then it dovetailed into identity design. If I had that get into identity design, there was a project at Steve McCann for Guinness Ghana. Guinness Ghana had, I think they had combined, they had bought, was it Kumasi Brewery, GBL, and Guinness joined together. I don't know whether they bought it or forgive me. And they needed an identity. And I'd done a sketch of something which wasn't accepted in the rounds in the agency, you know. And then finally, they didn't take the agency's solution. They took it to London. And when the final thing came out and I saw it on the crates and things, I was like, this has that same kind of, it was, of course, not the same thing, but I mean, the idea of that kind of twirl. I said, this is something I could get myself into, because if I felt some connection in there, and I felt it was a missed opportunity. So then I thought, okay. And up to now, it still hurts me that I wasn't able to, you know, do something which would have caught my creative director's eye for it to be submitted, for it to have, imagine it being on all the crates in Ghana. That would have been magical. So yes, so then I moved into design and brand identity, because I realized by getting to brand identity, I could then speak to the CEOs of the companies. If I was just doing normal design, I might end up working with, you know, the heads of marketing departments and the likes. But when it comes to identity, the CEOs of the companies tend to want to be part of that kind of decision-making process, which makes the whole design process even simpler and easier. So yes, that's just a whirlwind tour of how I got to where I am now.
There was a day I sat on a plane and saw somebody flying from one European country to another. And I turned and saw somebody reading a book. Mm-hmm. And the authors of the book were Albert and Kwadwo. And I said to myself that this is my most fulfilling day ever as an author.
Wow.
Because the guy was reading the books with such concentration next to me on the plane that he didn't even say hello to me.
Oh my goodness. So he missed, you know.
Let's move away from what he missed to the fact that of what he was looking at. For you, when was that day that you sat down and said, this is it? This is what I was born to do?
But I feel the more you practice, you know, with anything, the more you practice, the better you get. Not because it becomes easier, but it's because you start to realize, you know, how to make things better, how to solve things, and you know, you don't have to stress yourself too much. You can still solve the same problems with less effort. So it got to a stage where I got the brief. In fact, it wasn't even a brief. And forgive me, I know I keep mentioning ICGC all the time, because that is where most of my seminar work, you know, has happened. It's great when you have a client like Dr. Otabil who's able to give you that latitude, who wants something bold, and even though sometimes he might want to scale back, the effort, you know, and the intention is there. So typically every year we keep doing the same thing. This end of year service that we do, this watch night service that we do, this watch night, and then finally they brought the name Crossover, so we're just writing Crossover there. And then I wasn't even, and I will not recommend this for designers to do, I wasn't briefed to do anything for Crossover. I just sat there and thought to myself, this is an opportunity to do something, even though the client hasn't asked for it. And thereby, I created the identity for the end-of-year service called Crossover. Very simple idea, because I could just see two O's, and I thought, okay, one could be the sun, you know, going down, and one could be, or it could be the moon, depending on how you want to interpret it. The whole idea is it's a new day. You know, we are moving from one day to the other, hence you are crossing over no bridges, no funny things. And so when that struck me, and I was just looking at it, and funny enough, it hasn't changed. If it has changed, it was only because I did a small edit on the letter S in there. But typically, it's the same way I designed it, the same way I sketched it, the same way I designed it. That's what's still being in use. And once that was done, I felt I didn't know it would have the impact that it has had, but I felt the simplicity of it all, the ideas which informed the solution, the structure of the identity itself, the application of it, and then I put it forward. This is what I think we should use. And okay, let's go. And I thought, at that, I felt magical about that, and I was hoping that everybody would say, oh, this is so magical. But at that moment, it felt very
mundane,
very, very, okay. And then it started to take on life by itself and move and grow and grow and grow, and to the point where now it has become like the default for churches to be used.
How does it feel when somebody takes what you've created with all the nuances and understanding of all the curves, the rising sun, the new day, everything that went into the thinking?
Yes.
And then, I don't want to use the word bastardize, but reinterpret it in their own way without some small detail that is the fulcrum around which the whole thinking revolves. How do you feel when that happens?
It's frustrating because you want people to grow. You don't want to create, replicas of yourself. You want people to have, different ways of approaching things. And like in solving problems, I might have 4 or 5 different solutions, and all of them, if I'm rigorous about them, they might be able to solve that problem. And I'm thinking, as a designer, or if anybody calls themselves a designer, there is no reason to copy what somebody else has done. You can be inspired by the work. All clients are different. They might be in the same industry, but all clients are different. Their objectives are different. So you cannot take something from, what the designer has done. You don't know what has gone into it, and then, slap it on something else and move away with it. So at the end of it all, what you keep doing to yourself and the industry is you are letting people know that this is easy to do. This is something, throw away. I shouldn't pay so much money for such a thing. Anybody can do it. And yes, anybody can do it, but not anybody can make it successful to the point where it starts becoming valuable, where other people now want to steal it. So yes, I wouldn't encourage designers to do such a thing, because you're just shooting yourself in the foot. And for the customer or the client, it doesn't speak well.
Let me ask you about the frequently used terminology, designer's block.
Yes.
Let me ask you about designer's block. That time when you have an assignment, you sit down and nothing just comes. I mean, I know about author's block because I write.
Okay.
There are times when, you just freeze. Nothing comes, and you just have to accept that nothing flows.
Yes.
Do you also have designer's block?
Very
And
much.
how should the designer respond to designer's block?
You have it all the time. Over time, after I've realized you just have to start working. It might not be the best of solutions. Always carry your sketchbook around. I always carry a sketchbook around, because you never know when something's going to strike. And so when I have designer's block, it's best not to start looking at designs that people have done. Try to solve the same problem that you've solved, because that will make it worse for you. You end up just replicating something with a small change here. It's not authentic to what you're doing. It might be best to take a step away from it to do something else, because in the back of your head, it's still stewing in there. The problem now is
something else like what?
It could be anything. It could be something leisurely.
Really?
If you're into it, yes. If you're into it, if it's
Watch football,
those kind of things, movies. I love swimming. Listen to podcasts. It's something to just clear your head.
I'm asking this question.
Yes.
So let me create a real life scenario for you. You have a client who's giving you an assignment. It's so urgent for them. They are on your neck. They are calling you, putting pressure on you.
Talking from experience.
And giving you a deadline, and you are designer, you get a designer's block. And so you go to the swimming pool to go and swim. And here is the client driving somewhere, and they happen to pass the swimming pool, and they see you in the swimming pool swimming.
Yes. Yes.
Nana Kwadwo,
Yes.
to the client, you're not serious.
It's not the best. No, you don't want the client to see you
Help
do
the
that.
client to understand what you are saying. I'm trying to build a bridge
Yes.
between the creative person and the user of the creative person's work, so that there will be less conflicts. So I'm solving a conflict issue.
Yes, yes.
Talk to that.
The idea is to try and encourage the client that, and hopefully because of your track record, they can be a bit at peace. Yes, the reality is there normally is a deadline to something, and you can't really move that deadline. If the client has a lot of trust in what you do and they're sympathetic to you, I mean, you can't also take advantage of it because you have some creative block or designer's block taking place. Before you even get designers, the reason why you might get designer's block or creative block is because you are not fully confident of the solution. It's not probably because you haven't created a solution for it. You're just not sure that this solution works. If you are, I'm actually doing something for a client, and it's the same situation where the client has pushed me to the wall and I said, okay, you know what? Let me just give it to you. Oh, no, I don't give it to me. It's not because you're frustrated, but you know you want the solution, but you are just not 100% sure yet. And again, it goes back to this whole thing. It's a scrappy goal. It will work, but you're just not 100%, certain. So in situations like that, you might feel, okay, deadline is looming, client is on your neck, you have solutions, you might not be confident of those solutions, but you might just pick one. In that process where you are picking one, where you are before you realize, everything starts to come together. So it might not be the one that you chose, you might have just done it as an exercise. But once you start putting those things together, for some reason, it starts to connect, and then the magic happens.
Let me ask you my final question for today. Have you ever been tempted by forward integration, backward integration? So the designer's product ends up being used by the printer, and then there's the photographer's product ends up being used by the designer. Do you find a pull to engage in adjacencies, other businesses that are related to the designer? And if you do, is it a good thing, or it has its own challenges for the designer?
It can work. I mean, for me, it's not something I planned on doing. You read a lot of books, you read a lot of management books, a lot of design books, a lot of your books. In fact, meeting you back in the day, I think it's been about 20 years now or more, or so. Yes. And you were one of my heroes, and I thought, how am I ever going to meet such a person? And you walked into my office. And I was just mind blown. Just mind blown about that experience. So I wanted to do things which would excite me, which are creative, in nature, which give me all the same energy that I'm getting by doing my core design work. So yes, like photography, because of course it's image driven. It has the same principles, using composition, color, and those kind of things. And then you can imbue it with more meaning, unlike with design where you are attending to the client's, objectives. With this, it gives you a bit more latitude. Like I said initially, you want to do things outside of that where you can, just put yourself into the problem and create something which is not even going to sell. It's just to satisfy your soul, so that you can go back to where you are selling your soul for the client.
So if I understand you right, there are these things that you do, the photography, some of the other things you do are things that you do to feed to nourish your soul,
exactly,
for you to refocus on your
the design,
core.
on my core.
And that's okay.
Definitely. You don't want anything that's going to be stressing you. I mean, clients and friends have suggested, why don't you get into production? Why that production? My hair, I've lost my hair already. If I should get to production, because I don't have an affinity for, not that I can't do it or whatnot, but I just don't enjoy those kind of things. I don't enjoy, things that are laborious, things that are repetitive, those kind of, so I need to do something which, like you mentioned, forward integration. It all works together in a nice line. If I'm doing photography, if I'm doing some kind of illustration, if I'm doing graphic design, if I'm doing brand identity, if I'm doing something to do with fine arts, if I'm doing fashion, if I've got myself into fashion now. So all those kind of things are kind of interrelated, and they all give me pleasure. And there are avenues of making money, from those kind of things. As a designer, you don't want to be stressed where you are relying on the client to pay you, because then you can't really think. Right. You need that kind of security. You need that kind of latitude where you're not always thinking about money. Not that money is not important, but for a creative person, once money comes into the mix, the solutions tend to be very sterile. Because you need it out there quickly. You have bills to pay. You're pushing out. It's like an assembly line. Instead of you creating unique solutions for your clients, you just end up pushing things for the sake of being paid. So no disrespect to anybody who's going through that at the moment, but you need to have that kind of do other things which will give you that peace of mind and that space to be able to focus, properly on clients and what they need.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nana Kwadwo, the creative director of Oxygen Brand Consultants and Design Consultants, has been my guest for the past hour, helping me to understand how the creative mind works. And I can tell you something, for the first time, I've listed 15 lessons. I typically would do 10, and I can push on to 12, but when I do 15, it means that I want to preserve everything he has said in exactly the way he said it. I'm going to give you all 15, after which I'm going to ask him his closing thoughts for that young designer starting this journey. What should they do? What should they not do? In exactly 30 seconds, what would he tell the budding young designer? But the thoughts of Nana Kwadwo, what makes a good designer? He says, create or communicate out of chaos, create desire, the wow factor, and a business solution. Number 2, it's about the natural flair versus training. He says he has a natural flair, but he finds a lot from things outside design. Things like photography, music, writing, reading, current affairs, literature. Third one is exploring non-design themes. He says if you go at the work 100% concentration, you repeat the same solutions. When you veer out, you widen the core, you widen the base and the echo chamber. The fourth is about the client's need versus the designer's solutions. He says that most clients are initially very, very bold, but when you take them along the route, then they start pulling back to conservative solutions. So walk them along the way, step by step. The fifth is about ease of approval. When the person requesting the work has authority, it's easier to get approval. When there are several layers, innovation is more difficult. The sixth is about Eureka Moments. He says, you can once in a while get a moment of inspiration where the thing just flows, but typically create a blank sheet, gather raw materials, and work through a process to get the solutions. Number 7, finding the balance between the client's agency and commercial pressures and the designer's utopian world of inspiration can be difficult, but the balance is key. Number 8 is about rejected work. He says those drafts that keep getting rejected really are the foundation on which the ultimately accepted work rests. Number 9 is about how he entered into design. He says he always wanted to do something more difficult. He felt design was too easy, so he wanted to become a teacher, learn English literature. And so he got the rare opportunity to go to Oxford to study English literature. But just then, his beloved mom passed, and that shattered his world. But Marian Apasampong took him under her wings and ushered him into design and Mac Consult, and then he began the journey. Then he talked about the number 10, polishing, going to STB McCann and Mr. Kofi Amos, drilling the life out of him and teaching him how to polish the raw diamond. Number 11 is about repositioning. He says he veered from regular design into brand identity because it gave him more access to decision makers and CEOs, and therefore the chance to grow his work. He spoke about the client who has given him the biggest opportunity, being ICGC and the International Central Gospel Church and Dr. Mensa Otabil, and he said, interestingly, his most fulfilling work was a work that was not requested. And that was the crossover solution. Offering unrequested solutions can be the gateway to your biggest solution in life. He says he just offered it, and it was accepted, and the rest, as I say, is history. Number 13 is about plagiarism. He says you can admire somebody's work, but don't copy it, as I say, ditto, and offer it as a solution, because when you do that, you insult your creativity as a designer, and as a company, that does not help you to advance your business. Number 14 is about designer's block. He says, no matter what, there are times when the solution will just not flow. Accept it, step back, do something different, like going swimming. And if the client sees you swimming, please take it in good faith. It's not that he's not serious. He has to swim to get the new design to come back for you. And the final one is about diversification and business integration. He says, listen, don't get caught in an assembly line, just producing so you can meet your bills. Find things that are interrelated, like photography, illustration, fashion, art, that will nourish your soul. And even if they give you some income, serve more to inspire you to come back and stay within your core. These are the rare 15 lessons from Nana Kwadwo Duah of Oxygen. Nana, take us home. What would you say to a designer starting the journey and say, oh yeah, it's good for you, you are winning awards, you are at the top? What would be your closing thoughts for that designer beginning this journey?
Wow. It's going to be long, it's going to be arduous, but it's going to be fun, it's going to be exciting. Just have the confidence in yourself. Have empathy for others as well. The client might not always be right, but your problem is not to solve the client's, to massage their ego and whatnot. It's to solve the client's business problem. If you can understand that you are in this industry to solve a business problem, you see yourself as a business or as a business person, and not as a fine art where they'll pat you on the back and say nice work. By doing all those things, you get your fulfillment, you get your joy, you get paid well for it, and then you can help contribute to yourself also by also helping others. But empathy, for me, is key. In this industry, it's very difficult. But if you just focus on just pulling things out and being harsh with clients and your peers and whatnot, it doesn't ever end well. So yes, focus, have confidence in yourself, have a lot of empathy, and enjoy the journey.
If you had asked me to predict the word that you will end on, I would never have thought about empathy. But thinking about it is such a huge word. Thank you so much, Nana Kwadwo Duah. Oxygen Creative Director, for spending this beautiful moment with us. And I'm sure you've enjoyed. Let's have this debate on social media as we try to build a bridge between the creative genius and their very interesting ways, and the client and their very commercial desires, interests, and timelines. And I hope that tonight has helped to build a bridge between these two very important entities, and also educated us a bit more about why we are so different and yet so aligned. So we do this again next week. My name is Albert Okran, saying a big thank you to Team Springboard, working so hard to make this happen. And then to our sponsors, MTN, Pulse, the Enterprise Group, UMB Bank, and our media partners, the Multimedia Group, and the Graphic Communications Group. On Tuesday, find Nana Kwadwo Duah in full on page 18 of the Graphic Business, sharing these 15 principles in summary on that page. Let's do this again next week. Until then, God bless you, and God bless you.